a small town in southeastern Nigeria, was as busy as ever. Women moved between stalls, their wrappers swaying as they called out prices. The scent of fresh peppers, roasted plantains, and palm oil filled the air. Among the traders was Nwanyerowa, a respected widow in her 50s. She had worked hard all her life, raising her children and managing her farm. Her hands were rough from years of labor, but she carried herself with the quiet strength of a woman who knew her worth. That morning, as she arranged her goods, a man approached her. He was one of Chief Okugo's tax men. "You must prepare," he said, glancing at her property. "We are counting women's belongings now. You will soon pay tax." Nwanyerowa froze. "What did you say?" "The British want to tax women. Be ready." Her heart pounded. Tax women? That had never been done before. In Igbo land, only men paid tax. Women worked hard, running markets, farming, and taking care of their families. But now, the colonial rulers wanted to take from them too. Nwanyerowa straightened her back. "Go and tell Okugo that we will not pay," she said firmly. She turned away, her mind racing. This was an insult. A challenge. And she would not face it alone. By the afternoon, word had spread like wildfire. Women from nearby villages gathered under the old Udara tree, their voices rising with anger. Some carried pestles, others held their fists in the air. "This tax is a robbery," cried Adanma, a fierce trader from Aba. "We must act before they take everything from us," added Ezen, an elderly woman with gray hair wrapped in a blue scarf. The women clapped, stomped, and ululated, sending a clear message: they would not back down. By nightfall, a plan had been made. By the next morning, the streets of Oloko were no longer quiet. Women from different villages had arrived, their faces set with determination. Some came with their babies tied to their backs, others with baskets of food, knowing this fight would not be over in a day. Nwanyerowa stood in the center of the crowd, her voice steady as she spoke. "Our mothers did not suffer for us to be treated like this," she said. "We work from sunrise to sunset, and now they want to take from us. No. We must stand together." A loud yes erupted from the women. They knew that if they let the British take this step, things would only get worse. Soon, they would control the markets, take their farms, and demand even more money. "We must go to Chief Okugo's house," Adanma declared. "He must explain why he allowed this to happen." So they went. More than 2,000 women, moving together, singing, clapping, and chanting. Their voices filled the air, shaking the very ground. When they arrived at Okugo's compound, they surrounded it, sitting down in a traditional form of protest known as sitting on a man. They sang songs mocking him. "Okugo, greedy man. You eat alone, but we see you. You take from the poor, but your end will come." The chief's guards were nervous. They had never seen women stand up like this. After hours of pressure, Okugo finally came out. His face was red with anger, but he knew he was outnumbered. "The tax will not happen," he announced. "Go back to your homes." A cheer went up, but the women were not fools. "Make the British hear it." Someone shouted. "Yes. We will take this fight to Aba, Owerri, and Calabar. We will not stop until they remove this tax completely." That night, fires burned bright in villages across Igbo and Ibibio lands. The movement had begun. By the end of November 1929, the news had reached every town: Aba, Owerri, Umuahia, Ikedekpene, Calabar. Women were gathering by the thousands. Everywhere, markets closed, and women left their homes to march. They carried palm fronds, a symbol of peace but also a warning: we are watching. We are coming. In Aba, over 10,000 women surrounded the colonial office. "Where is the district officer?" they demanded. Inside, British officials watched nervously. This was not what they had expected. Women were supposed to be silent, submissive. But these women were fearless. "We do not pay tax." The women shouted. "We do not obey warrant chiefs." The British officer, Captain Hill, stepped forward. "Go home," he ordered. "This is not your concern." The women laughed. Ezen, the elderly woman, stepped forward. "You are a stranger here, white man," she said. "You do not decide for us." The crowd cheered, their voices rising in unison. Then, the women began their second strategy, destroying the symbols of oppression. They marched to the native courts, the places where warrant chiefs judged unfairly and demanded bribes. They tore down the buildings, set fire to records, and freed prisoners. The British were shocked. This was not just a protest anymore. It was a war. The news of the women's uprising spread fast. From Aba to Owerri, Umuahia, and Calabar, the colonial government realized they had a serious problem. The British never expected women to resist them like this. They thought women were weak. They were wrong. Inside the government office in Owerri, District Officer W.J. Cook paced the floor. His face was pale, and his hands trembled as he read the reports. Over 10,000 women gathered in Aba. Native courts destroyed. Warrant chiefs removed from their homes. His assistant, Mr. Gill, shook his head. "Sir, the women are growing stronger every day. If we don't stop them, they will turn the whole region against us." Cook slammed his fist on the table. "Then we must stop them." That same day, the colonial government sent soldiers and police officers to Aba, Owerri, and Calabar. But the women were ready. In Umuahia, women gathered in the thousands outside the district office. They sang, danced, and clapped, a show of strength and unity. But then, the British officers appeared. Armed soldiers. Guns. Bayonets. The women stood their ground. One officer fired a warning shot into the air. The sound cracked through the market square. The women did not move. Then, without warning, the soldiers opened fire. Bullets tore through the crowd. Women screamed. Women fell. Blood spilled onto the dusty ground. By the time the gunfire stopped, at least 50 women were dead. Many more were wounded. Among them was Ezen, the elderly woman who had spoken boldly to the British officer days before. She lay on the ground, her wrapper stained with blood. Adanma ran to her side, tears streaming down her face. "Mama! Mama, wake up!" Ezen's lips trembled. "Don't stop," she whispered. "Fight for our daughters." Then, she was gone. The British thought killing the women would end the uprising. They were wrong again. Instead of fear, the women's anger grew stronger. More women joined the protests. More markets shut down. More warrant chiefs fled. The colonial government had no choice. In January 1930, the British finally announced. The taxation of women would not happen. The powers of the warrant chiefs would be reduced. It was not a complete victory, but it was a sign that the women had won. At great cost. When the news reached Iloko, Mwanyaroa sat under the Udara tree, looking at the sky. She thought of Ezen. Of the fallen sisters. They had paid the price for freedom. She closed her eyes and whispered, "We did not kneel. We did not bow. We stood." And history would never forget them.